Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
We're live at the Miami Book Fair, powered by Life Improvement Radio, and I'm excited for another year, 8 years. So I want to first bring on my co-host, Eric Remmel. Eric, how are you? Can you believe it? 8 years we've been broadcasting live for this event. First year we met each other, and since then, not at all, but it's exciting, and I can't believe it's been 8 years.
I know. Where's the time fly? When I logged in this morning, I was taking a look and counting the calendar, and I'm like, wow, 8 years, really? I don't know where the time's gone, but I'm excited. It's always a fun event, and I'm looking forward to talking about the great authors this year.
Exactly, and we're excited to welcome the program Leonin. And Mia, thanks for calling, and I appreciate you coming on the show. Is this the first time you've been in Miami as an author, or have you been here before?
Well, good morning or good afternoon. Thank you for having me on the show, Neil. And I'm kind of an old-timer at the Miami Book Fair. This is probably my 6th or 7th appearance, and I'm a resident of Miami.
Yeah, I saw that.
You're Uber to get here.
Yeah. I ask these questions, but so for our listeners to know, you teach at the University of Miami, correct?
Yes, I teach creative writing at the University of Miami, and I've been teaching for 18 years at UM.
Wow. And Eric, it's very interesting where Lisa sets us up with a lot of teachers, right? Especially because of my former background in teaching, right, Eric?
It is pretty great, and it's always fun to talk to educators, especially since I feel like, at least in my experience with my family and friends, that it's a lot of folks aren't as excited about literature and reading and all these great things. So it's a lot of fun to be able to get educators on the show.
So, but your background, Mia, is in absolutely, Mia. Your background is in poetry, but you now wrote a memoir, right? So you kind of went from one genre to saying, finally, I'm going to write an entire book. Is that correct? How many books have you written?
Well, I've written 3 books of what I would call kind of straight poetry, 3 books of poems. And then about 8 years ago, I wrote a memoir called Havana and Other Missing Fathers. And that was kind of a travel/family memoir about meeting my father, who was a Cuban exile, for the first time when I was 20. And then the book that's coming out that I'm reading from today in the book fair is called Fable of the Pack-Saddled Child. And I consider it a hybrid book, actually. It works with lines of poetry and sentences. It's a mix of poetry and fiction. I call it a book-length poem, but it's quite a hybrid genre book. So it's something that I've never done before. It's very different.
Really? That's interesting. So kind of for our listeners to understand this, explain a hybrid to us. Because, again, I've interviewed many authors, but I never heard that term of hybrid.
Well, I actually think hybrid the idea of hybridity has been around, for a very long time in terms of, in the world of creative nonfiction, for example, the idea of a lyric essay would be considered hybrid. But in terms of poetry and fiction, I think the hybrid genre or form is going to be coming up more and more. We're going to see that more. In the case of this book, it might be better to give specifics. In my case, this book it's a book-length poem about a little girl named Micaela who's 10 years old and lives in a Spanish-speaking city by the sea. And in order to overcome a traumatic assault, she sort of loses herself in her imagination, and she falls in love or becomes obsessed with the tilde, which is the little curvy line on top of the Spanish ñ. And she ends up following that little tilde, that curve on top of the ñ, comes alive, and she follows it around town, and it leads her on all of these adventures. So the book is a hybrid in that it's very narrative. There's a tale that you're following, it's hybrid in its level of maturity, because although I wrote it to sound like a fable and to have sort of the dream world of a child, it also deals with some serious material like sexual assault and systemic poverty, etc. And so and there are images. So I worked with a wonderful artist, Nereida Garcia Ferraz, a Cuban-born, Miami-based visual artist, and she created original drawings for the book. So it also has color images. So it's a hybrid in many ways.
You did a great job
of
explaining that. And I don't mind that. That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Now, Eric, because he mans the boards and he's doing all these different things over in a warm area in Florida. Like both of you guys are warm. Like I'm freezing. We had a snow/ice storm last night, yesterday, and our power was out most of the day. Eric chimes in when he wants to chime in, unless I want to offer him. You have a question for me, or you just want me to keep going, Eric?
No, I was really interesting. And just for the record, Neil, it's pretty cold here today, too. I'm in St. Petersburg. It's about, I don't know how it is down there, Neil, but it's in its 60s right now, which is usually cool for us this time of year.
Yeah, no, it's in
nowhere near what you're going through, Neil. Oh, well, see, now we're really
trust me. Yeah, Miami and St. Petersburg are different stories. So, Eric, go ahead, and whenever you chime in, you chime in. We don't have a third. Peter went with us for 2 years. But, Mia, we've been doing this for 8 years, so we know exactly the gist of what goes on, and you never know the stories of how they pull different authors when they don't show up, and we get to interview somebody like that. So we do some preparation, but honestly, it's on the fly because the interesting thing. So let me go into specifically enough with writing and teaching creative writing at the University of Miami. Do they like the fact that, a lot of them, you write, you do creative writing, but that you're a published author, that you continue to write? Do your students really ask questions and are really intrigued by your success as an author? Because not all teachers that teach at the universities are always published and are successful authors that go to different book fairs. Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think that is somewhat true. It's interesting that you'd ask that, because I have a teenage daughter, and in this respect, my students in the past have sometimes felt like my teenage daughter, in that they don't see me as she sees me as her mom and not as an author, and they see me as a teacher and not as an author, So when this book came out, for example, and they heard about it, they're like, "What? Miss Leonin, you've got books out? That's so cool." Like, it's funny because, young people Google everything, but I don't know, I think they see their teachers as, in a really particular role, so I think a lot of them didn't even know that I do write. And I give examples when I'm talking about writing. I'll talk about my own experiences as a writer, but really in terms of process. I don't go on and on about if I've published this many books or that kind of stuff. So a lot of times it's incognito. I'm an incognito writer in my writing classroom, not intentionally, but just by the nature of, I think, young people, sometimes they see us, if you're a police officer, you're a police officer. If you're a teacher, you're a teacher, and they kind of see us that way. But when they do find out about my work, they're always excited to know, and then, they have a lot of questions. And
here's a great follow-up question. Now, I was assuming a lot of the successful teachers that we have that come here that get to Miami, it's not the easiest thing. You have to be a successful writer for sure. In your field, all over the country, how many authors are published that teach creative writing in universities? What percentage, Mia, would you say, especially when looking at your colleagues all over, even the colleagues at the University of Miami that teach in the same department as you teach?
Well, I would say in order to teach in a creative writing program, you usually have to have published one book, but and for example, my colleagues have published numerous books. That each colleague has published numerous books, and it's an interesting question in the larger sense, because just as with the publishing industry, the newspaper industry, the music industry, education is undergoing a huge change, and these teaching jobs are becoming more and more difficult to come by. So I know of people with 2-3 books, and they're hard pressed to find a job that's not adjuncting, for a pretty low wage. So I feel lucky to do what I do, and I still love teaching after 18 years. They say what energizes you, what you enjoy doing energizes you, and I think I'm a testament to that, because I was kind of a bohemian younger person. I never imagined myself staying in the same place, much less the same job, for more than a couple of years.
Exactly.
But I love what I do so much. I still, am always getting new ideas and energy from it. But the percentage, I would say, is very high of published author, of faculty in creative writing programs. The percentage is very high of at least having one book published, and probably more, because the competition is fierce. As you know, the education system is, better more than I probably, because that's one of your areas of specialty.
Yeah, that's one of my areas of expertise. No, I agree, but I never knew that. I never asked that question. But you think of the competition, but also successful. I consider you successful. Not everyone gets the privilege to be a speaker and a presenter and an author that's promoted at the Miami Book Fair. Then you would have 10,000 authors, right? Because how many creative writing professors are there all over? So you have a following, you have fans, people know you, so that makes it different. So Eric, do you want to chime in on this? You never knew I'd go that direction, but that's what I love when I interview people, is to get certain new nuances of things I've learned. But Eric, this business of writing books from non-published to published is so competitive, and there's so many out there. If every creative writer was published, then they should be, but for them to get the honor that Mia has of attending the Miami Book Fair. What are your thoughts on that, Eric?
I know it's a huge honor, and it's exciting for you to be there and to even be local, because I know a lot of folks have to travel from all over to get to the book fair. So that's exciting in itself, but the opportunity to be there, and it's amazing, the publishing industry, how many people are writing now and are accessible to it, but don't get the exposure of the Miami Book Fair. I'm just curious, since it's such an interesting topic, and it's so far outside of the kind of the norm of what you're writing with this hybrid, how is the reception of the book? Has it been well received, gotten a lot of praise, or is it too soon? How's the book been received?
The book has been really well received. I think it has a broader reach than perhaps a more straightforward just book of poems, because of the narrative element, and also because of the larger conversation that's going on in our country about sexual assault and trauma, and the idea, even with the discussions of the children that have been separated at the border from their families, that's raised just the whole concept of trauma, and especially childhood trauma. I think that's raised that into the collective consciousness of the country even more than, perhaps it would have been even a year ago. So in that sense, I feel like the book is, serendipitously timely. And I've done readings at Bucknell University and at Penn State and the University of Missouri in Kansas City, and it's been really well received by mainly university students that I've visited with, and also I've gotten a few nice reviews as well. So I'm happy with awesome. the reception. Yeah.
That's the nice thing about it, is when you're in your office late at night or in your writing studio or wherever, to get acknowledgement, when this is what's so great about the Miami Book Fair or other book fairs, you finally can get with other authors that have read your work or other fans, that you finally are acknowledged for all the hard work that you put into it.
Yeah, it is very rewarding. And it's a great opportunity to meet other writers and readers and just connect with people who love books. That's probably the best part of the whole affair.
All right.
Any plans for future books? Do you have anything in the works?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. You finish up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm working on a series of essays and lyric essays or essays, that would have more, not academic, but sort of essays on changing times in our culture, on issues of feminism, issues of being a mother, and I think I'd like to write some things about teaching. After having been a teacher for a long time now, I've been sort of having an ongoing conversation in my head just about teaching and what I learned from my students. And so there's a lot of things I'd like to sort of write about that experience.
Yeah. And how concerned are you, Mia, about, and I have to have a follow-up question to your answer. How concerned are you, Mia, about our education system today and how it's teaching to a test and eliminating the creative end in the high schools and elementary schools? I think it's really frustrating. It's frustrating for me as a former teacher and a tutor to see what's going on, because I was needed so much, Mia, when it came to tutoring in 8th grade and elementary school. Now I'm only needed in the SAT and ACT because they don't have any of those skill sets ready for college, a lot of them. You're not going to see them a lot in your creative writing courses because parents or they get tutors to keep them in the right area, but this creativity is like a really hard thing to deal with, right?
Yeah, no, it's really, really something we need to deal with head on, because I think this future students and current students are in danger of being very limited in terms of their ability to think creatively and critically. Those two are intertwined. They're not mutually exclusive. And I'll tell you an amazing anecdote really quick from a student who is an engineering major, and this happens all the time, engineering major, pre-med, wanders into one of my workshops, and they're just brilliant and amazing and passionate, and I tell them, you've got to keep taking creative writing. Whatever your parents want you to do, whatever you want to do, do it, but keep writing. And they, they feel the same way. They love writing. This young woman went on to get her degree in engineering. She went to Boston, applied to a firm, and as part of her engineering portfolio, she included a few poems. And the hiring committee, they were all up in arms. Like, who does she think she is? Why, this is absurd. Why would somebody give us some poems? But the head of the firm and the head of the hiring committee said, if you can't understand a poem, you can't understand a building. And they gave her the job. So, point being, there are a few people out there in those other fields like medicine and the sciences and engineering, et cetera, that get it. We need more people in the industry, in those industries, and I think it will happen because, you cannot separate like creativity and critical thinking.
Exactly. It's terrible, and you can't teach critical thinking unless, as teachers, we train these teachers to teach critically. If we're teaching them to teach to a specific way of mechanically, like we're teaching today, the creative side's gone. So, Mia, we have to continue to be advocates in that way. Best place we can find information on you. Purchase your book and learn more about you, Mia. Where can we go?
You can go to my author site at the University of Miami website. You can go to mialeonin.com. And I'm on Instagram, just as Mia Leonin.
All right, fabulous. I appreciate it, Mia, for you calling, and
so
Eric
much,
as
Mia.
well. And take care, and we're going to take a quick short break. You're welcome. Okay, bye-bye. You're listening to the Neil Haley Show, powered by Life Improvement Radio, live from the Mighty Book Fair, and we'll be back in just a moment.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.